हरे कृष्ण।
नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा. So we welcome you all to this new course. This will be an overview of the eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So eastern section is what we cover within the scope of Bhakti Shastri within our movement. The first 19 chapters of NOD is covered within in the syllabus of Bhakti Shastri. So we will be covering only that much, and not even that much. Actually, we will be covering only the Vaidhi Sadhana section, and that itself will be split into hopefully 2 parts. If need be, we might extend it to a third part. So we will see. It depends on how enthusiastic the audience are in asking relevant questions and engaging in a discussion. So before we start this course, I will make a few things clear. First thing is, this is going to be an overview course, but even though it is an overview course, we will stop wherever essential concepts are there and go deep into those concepts and try to understand those concepts. And the second point is that since this is a YouTube live course, there won't be a scope for interaction with the audience. Despite this being a course, live interaction is not possible, but you can always use your chat box to ask relevant questions, and the next day when we will address all the questions that you have asked, all the relevant questions, because if there are 100 questions, I may not have time to answer all the questions, but I will at least try to answer the most important questions which are very relevant to the subject matter that we are discussing. In fact, having taught this course quite a few times, I more or less can anticipate the questions that would come. But if I tell it beforehand, if I share those concepts beforehand, then it may not be very much appreciated. So I would leave it to the audience to ask the relevant questions so that I can address these questions later. And this is not going to be a regular talk. This is a properly designed course for enhancing the Shastric understanding of the devotees, and it's a free course. But as you all might know, nothing comes free in this material world. We do charge for it, but not in terms of dollars or rupees, but we charge in terms of your commitment to the course. So if you can commit yourselves, then you will definitely find the course very relevant for your practical practice of devotional service. Commitment means commitment in terms of attending all 5 days, commitment in terms of taking notes, commitment in terms of asking relevant questions when the concept is not clear. So, if you can participate in this way, I can assure you that by the end of this course, a lot of very, very relevant concepts in Bhakti will become very clear by the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada. So, This is what we will be covering. As you can see on my right, the PowerPoint is there, that will be constantly there. So whatever I am speaking will be mostly from the PowerPoint. If in case I require the need for a board or something, I might explain some concepts by writing relevant details on the board and showing it to you. It's a little crude way of doing, but you may have to put up with me because this is my first online speaking engagement. So I'm already a little nervous and finding it a little awkward speaking to the camera. So if you can tolerate, then over a period of time, maybe I might overcome this camera sickness. So this is an overview course, but wherever needed, I will emphasize. So I have defined this as part 1 of the course, but how many parts we would have depends on the participation of the audience. So to cover this section. So I will start, and when we meet tomorrow, I'll start with the questions that you have asked. We will address those questions. Maybe it might take some time. I will try to explain whatever I have understood from this book. And then we will move on to the second day's portions. Okay. So, Srila Rupa Goswami is the foremost Acharya of our Sampradaya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself glorified Rupa Goswami for having completely understood his heart. You all might know this story, I don't want to get into the story. That is why we always pray, Shri Chaitanya Mano Abhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. So this shloka is a plea for seeking shelter at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, who has established the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this material world. So therefore he is glorified in this way, and we all, before starting this course, would like to sincerely seek the blessings of Srila Rupa Goswami, so that by his mercy we can try to understand a drop of the ocean of bhakti and bhakti rasa. So what was the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions this in the 4th verse of Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anarpita charim chirat karunaya avatirna kalau samarpayitum unnata ujjvala rasam swabhakti shriyam hari purata sundara dyuti kadamba sandipitah sada hridaya kandare spuratuvaha shachinandana. So it is mentioned that anarpita charim chirat, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give something which has never been given before. Karunaya, out of his great compassion, avatirnaha, kalau, he has descended in this age of Kali as the Kali Yuga avatar to give something which has never been given before, even in Satya Yuga. What is that? Unnata Ujjvala Rasam. There are many levels of understanding this Ujjvala Rasam. So Ujjvala Rasam means, the immediate meaning is, Ujjvala means that which is resplendent, that which is very dazzling and bright. So what is the most resplendent, dazzling and bright thing that the Vedas have to give? That is pure devotional service. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give that pure devotional service which has not been mixed by karma, jnana and yoga. The extent to which the purity of one's practice is emphasized in the parampara of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, till date it has never been emphasized to that level in any other sampradaya. So Ujjvala Rasam can indicate clarity, clear practice of pure devotional service. And Ujjvala Rasam also means Madhurya Rasa. But at this stage, we will not try to understand that meaning of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give. But this was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire, this was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. But Rupa Goswami, through his writings, primarily established this mission in this material world. So therefore, he is glorified as the foremost Acharya of our Sampradaya, to the extent that we all are called Rupanugas. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is also a very important Acharya in our Sampradaya, known for his prolific writing. So, he has glorified Srila Rupa Goswami in the beginning of his book, Shri Madhurya Kadambini. He has mentioned, Bhakti Purvai Shritas Tam Tu Rasam Pashyed Yadattadi Tam Naumi Satatam Rupa Nama Priyajanam Harehe. He says, in this material world, many acharyas have come, many great devotees have come. They have practiced bhakti. They have experienced the deep emotions of bhakti. They have perfected bhakti by reaching the stage of prema. They have gone back home, back to Godhead. I offer my obeisances to all of them. But my special obeisances is to Srila Rupa Goswami. Why? He says, Rasam Pashyed Yada Attadi. Only because of the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami in the form of his writings, of books like Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjvala Neelamani, and these kind of books where he has extensively written about the nature of rasa, the nature of spiritual emotions. Even a common devotee need not wait till he experiences those emotions to actually understand it. Theoretical understanding, even a theoretical understanding of rasa, spiritual emotions, how a devotee feels when he actually becomes qualified to interact with Krishna. What are the emotions that a devotee experiences? One need not wait till one reaches the stage of bhava and prema to actually understand. By the mercy of Rupa Goswami, one can understand it through his writings. So therefore, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur expresses his gratitude and his repeated obeisances to the stalwart Acharya, Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Jiva Goswami also comments about Rupa Goswami, about the mood of Rupa Goswami when he compiled this book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He says, obsessed by a desire to benefit all the devotees of the Lord, the esteemed author Srila Rupa Goswami compiled this remarkable work, the scripture called Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, using the rasa presented in Srimad Bhagavatam, which appeared within the lotus bud of his heart. So, the subject matter, the source of the contents of this book, he extensively draws from Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is condensed rasa. Pibata Bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvibhavuka. The beginning of Bhagavatam only, one is recommended, the devotee is recommended to drink Bhagavatam. Pravishtak karnarandrena swanam bhava saroruham dhunoti shamalam Krishna salilasya yatasharat. So, the words of Bhagavatam flows through the ears and enters into the deepest core of our hearts and cleanses our hearts and invites Shri Krishna to come and reside there. So, Rupa Goswami draws extensively from Srimad Bhagavatam, especially the 10th canto. And he has written this book. This book is a product of Rupa Goswami's pure unalloyed compassion. Obsessed Jiva Goswami says he was obsessed by a desire to benefit all the devotees of the Lord. It was not just a desire, it was an obsession. So, that is the nature of this book. And in Narottam Das Thakur, in one of his bhajans, Dhana Mora Nityananda, Pati Mora Gaurachandra, he writes a very beautiful stanza. He says, Vichara Koriya Mane, Bhakti Rasa Aswadane, Madhyastha Shri Bhagavata Purana. He says, Vichara Koriya Mane, how do I spend my time during the day? Bhakti Rasa Aswadane, by relishing the nectar of devotion. How does he relish? Madhyastha Shri Bhagavata Purana, highlighted by the periodic quotations from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is exactly what this book is all about. This is how Srila Rupa Goswami has written this book. So when Narottam Das Thakur says, my contemplation time is spent in relishing the nectar of devotion with periodic quotations from Srimad Bhagavatam, in all probability he is actually talking about studying the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu written by Srila Rupa Goswami. So all our, this is, you won't believe, this is after Bhagavatam the most commented book in our whole Sampradaya. In every generation of Acharya has written a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam and Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So just like Srimad Bhagavatam is said to be the incarnation of Krishna. Krishna Swadhamopagate Dharma Jnana Divissaha Kalau Nashta Drishamesha Purana Arko Adhuna Uditaha. So just like it is mentioned about Bhagavatam that just as the son of Krishna said, the son of Bhagavatam arose to compensate for the separation of Krishna, to compensate for the mood of separation that the devotees will feel in the absence of Krishna. Similarly, many acharyas mention that Shri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is the incarnation of Srimati Radharani herself. So therefore, the best way of understanding Srimad Bhagavatam is through Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Because Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is written in the form of a textbook and Srimad Bhagavatam is written in the form of a journal. So anyone who has understood the textbook knowledge properly, let's say if someone has not read a 10th grade physics book, 11th grade physics book, 12th grade physics book, then bachelor's level, master's level physics book. If he reads a journal, physics journal, let's say optics journal, he will not understand much. He will read some words, but he may not understand much. But if his textbook knowledge is very clear, if the concepts, if he has learned the concepts of optics, physics very clearly by studying the physics textbook, then when he reads that journal, he will see those very concepts coming alive in various descriptions, in various experiments in that journal, in various experimental results in that journal. Similarly, if one has understood the concepts of devotional service by diving deep into this ocean of Bhakti Rasa, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then when he studies Bhagavatam, he will see those concepts coming alive. He will be able to appreciate Bhagavatam so much better if he studies Bhagavatam through the glasses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So that's why Prabhupada included Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the portion for Bhakti Shastri and Bhagavatam in the portion for Bhakti Vaibhav and Bhakti Vedanta. So therefore, this book is extremely relevant book for all practicing Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is mentioned that how after teaching the essence of Bhakti Rasa to Srila Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually instructed him to write about it. Prabhu kahe shun rupa bhakti rasera lakshan, sutra rupe kahi vistara nayaya varnan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, my dear Rupa, please listen to me. Shuna Rupa, Bhakti Rasera Lakshan. Please hear about the nature of Bhakti Rasa. Sutra Rupe Kahi. I have explained this to you only briefly. I have given you just the symptoms. Vistara Nayaya Varnan, because we practically don't have sufficient time to speak about it in detail. But he empowers Srila Rupa Goswami to understand those subject matters. Para para shunya gabira bhakti rasa sindhu tomaya chakaite tara kahi eka bindu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, this ocean of bhakti rasa is so big that no one can estimate its length and breadth. However, just to help you taste it, I am describing but one drop of it to you. So ultimately, we may appreciate that these spiritual emotions as described by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu are very vast. But we may not really appreciate how vast it is until we actually reach that particular stage of our devotional development. So now, let's try to understand what is this book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and why is it a very important book for the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. A part of this discussion we have already done, but still some more points we will try to see. So basically, one of the very important aspects of this book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is definitions. Because when you have to have a very intelligent discussion with anyone, if you don't have a common understanding of the terminologies that both of you are using, then you can't reach any intelligent conclusion. So therefore, for example, we may use the word rasa, we may use the word pure devotee, Uttamadhikari. So unless both of us have a common understanding of these terminologies, what can we accomplish by using these terminologies? So therefore, where do we get this common understanding of these terminologies? Who defines it for us? Rupa Goswami. Where? In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. That is why this book, that is one of the main reasons this book is very, very important. So, but one may say, but why do we need precise definitions anyway? So, because if we do not have precise definitions, we will fall into confusion as we saw. For example, I may use the term bhakti and a common man may use the term bhakti. So, if you see actual Shastric explanations, bhakti by default means without any material desires. If it has material desires, then it is called as Mishra Bhakti. But if you use the term bhakti, by default it means without material desires. But in ordinary world, you don't see people using the term bhakti in that way. And bhakti generally means only towards Krishna or Vishnu, the way it is used. Otherwise, it is mentioned Anya Devata Bhakta. It is qualified as in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna qualifies Anya Devata Bhakta. Otherwise, if the word bhakti is used without any qualifier, it by default means towards Krishna or Vishnu. So, but we do see terminologies like Desh Bhakti, Samaj Bhakti. You can't perform devotional service towards Desh, Samaj like that. One may have some kind of a affinity for one's own country of birth and things like that. But one cannot worship the country like one worships Krishna. So therefore, and also within the language, especially in any language, especially in Sanskrit language, one particular word has multiple meanings generally. Sometimes, like for example, the word Atma. So Atma can mean body, Atma can mean mind, Atma can mean senses, Atma can mean the soul, Atma can mean the intelligence. And sometimes in the very same verse, the word Atma can be used in multiple ways. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmai vatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. The word Atma is used many times. And it has multiple meanings there. So therefore, if we do not predefine the way in which we are going to use terminologies, then it is very difficult. So therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami defines it for the practicing Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Because the other Sampradaya practitioners, they may use the same terminology, but they may have different meanings for it. But for practicing Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Srila Rupa Goswami defines these terminologies. So now, if this is, so using this, so Rupa Goswami gives extensive definitions. He defines, at least in the eastern section, if you see, which will be the scope of our discussion, he defines what is Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service. What is Sadhana Bhakti, devotional service in practice. What is Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. What is regulated devotional service, regulated according to the scriptures. What is Raganuga Sadhana? What is Bhava Bhakti? What is Prema Bhakti? So in this way he defines various different definitions based on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that subsequently when we use these terminologies, we know what exactly it means. So, and of course various other concepts also he explains in this book. So what is this nectar of devotion that Prabhupada wrote? Is it a translation of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? If you see, it is not actually. It is more of a summary study. Just like you have Krishna book. Krishna book is a summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, it is not a literal translation. So, if you compare the Nectar of Devotion text to the individual verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, you can see that more or less Prabhupada has covered all the verses along with the important commentaries written by Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So these are the two primary commentaries written by our Acharyas. The first commentary was written by Srila Jiva Goswami himself, who was the one who actually assisted Srila Rupa Goswami in compiling Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So he wrote the first commentary to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is called as Durgama Sangamani Tika. And subsequently many other commentaries were written, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote a very prominent commentary which is called as Bhakti Sara Pradarshini. So these two commentaries were originally referred to by Srila Prabhupada also in writing his own Nectar of Devotion. So if you see many points from the original text and from the commentaries you will see in Prabhupada's explanation, at least in the first 19 chapters. Very extensively he covers. But he does not use the standard format as he uses in Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, the Sanskrit verse, the English transliteration, word to word meaning, then the translation and purport. He does not follow that format. Rather he uses a Krishna book like summary study format. So what is the advantage of this? The advantage is that it gives the author a scope to summarize lot of sections which he may find his current audience, those topics not so immediately relevant. And sometimes he can drastically expand upon some subject matters if he thinks that the current audience need a more relevant explanation of it. That's exactly what Srila Prabhupada does in the early sections of Nectar of Devotion. He expands on certain subject matters more than even what Srila Jiva Goswami or Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has expanded. And in the later sections, he summarizes, because for his immediate audience, it might be little bit not so immediately relevant for that purpose. So, what is the result of such a summary study? If you see, probably more people have studied Srila Rupa Goswami's teachings through the Nectar of Devotion than through the original text itself. So, lakhs and lakhs of Nectar of Devotion books have been distributed. Prabhupada, in fact, wrote this book in the early 70s, 70 or 71, and it was funded by Sri Jayananda Prabhu. And Prabhupada gratefully acknowledges the contribution of Srila Jayananda Prabhu to compile this book. So very early in Krishna consciousness, this book was published. Even before he started publishing Srimad Bhagavatam also, he published Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, does it mean that ISKCON devotees should not or need not read the original text of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? It is not like that. Srila Prabhupada wrote Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is a summary study of the essential teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Ramananda Rai, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Prakashananda Saraswati. Yes, prominent conversations that has been compiled in the form of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which is a summary study of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Chaitanya Charitamrita. So even though, and similarly he wrote Krishna book, but subsequently started, when he reached the 10th canto, he started writing verse by verse translation and commentary to each verse also. So therefore, to fully appreciate Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is helpful to time and again refer to the original translation and of the text also. So we will do that whenever needed. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when we reach the section on Grantha Vibhag, how this book is divided, at that time we will discuss little bit more about this section. But for now, as I mentioned before, just like an ocean is divided into different sections, the simplest way of dividing an ocean is east, west, north, south. East, south, west, north. In the same way, Srila Rupa Goswami divides this ocean of Bhakti Rasa into 4 parts: eastern section, southern section, western section, and northern section. So as I mentioned before, the scope of and the chapters within each section, he divides it into waves. Just like the ocean has many waves, similarly this book also has many waves. So the eastern section is the subject matter that we will be discussing, and not even the full eastern section for this, because this course is titled Rediscovering Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So we will be discussing only till the section on Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. We may not even go to the section of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti, and subsequently discussion on Rasa, which is all will be subsequent courses, later courses for interested devotees. So for now we will start the eastern section, and the first wave of the eastern section is titled as Samanya Bhakti. So Samanya Bhakti means an overview of Bhakti. So just as any book, any traditional devotional text starts with what is called as Mangalacharan. Mangala Acharan means invoking auspiciousness. So Rupa Goswami also starts this book by invoking auspiciousness. Now this invoking auspiciousness is not a random thing. Mangalacharan is a science. There are specific elements of Mangalacharan. And this is described by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami at the beginning of his Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, Mangalacharan has three components, three prominent components. Se Mangalacharan haya trivida prakar, vastu nirdesh ashirvada namaskara. He says, Se Mangalacharana haya trivida prakar. So this Mangalacharan has three components, vastu nirdesh, ashirvada and namaskar. Vastu nirdesh means ascertaining what is the subject matter of this book. And ashirvada means offering some blessings to the readers. What will you gain by studying this text? And namaskar means offering obeisances to great personalities. So, he further says, what is this vastu nirdesh? Tritiya shloke te kari vastura nirdesh, yaha hai te jani parat tatvera uddesh. He says, in the third verse I indicate the absolute truth, who is the ultimate substance, vastu. With such a description, one can visualize the supreme truth. So, vastu means what is the subject of the book. Actually, the subject matter of every Vaishnava book is Krishna only, but different aspects of Krishna. So, similarly, the subject matter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is also Krishna only, but a particular aspect of Krishna. Just like the subject matter of Chaitanya Charitamrita is Krishna, but in his form as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Vasudev Krishna. Similarly, the subject matter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is also Krishna. But which Krishna? Rupa Goswami describes this in the first verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Akila Rasamrita Murti Prashramara Ruchiruddhatara Kapali Kalita Shamalalito Radha Preyan Vidur Jayati. So he says that we will not get into the details of each and every verse, but to highlight the subject matter of this book, Srila Rupa Goswami says, is Akila Rasamrita Murti Krishna. Krishna only, but that Krishna who is the reservoir of all rasa, that Krishna who is capable of perfectly reciprocating with every devotee in any particular relationship that the devotee may have with Krishna. It could be in Dasyaras, a mode of servitude. It could be in Sakyaras, a mode of friendship. It could be in Vatsalyaras, a mode of paternal or maternal affection towards Krishna. Or it could be Madhuryaras, a mode of conjugal attraction for Krishna. And Krishna is capable of perfectly reciprocating with the devotees in whatever emotions they may worship Krishna. So therefore, he is glorifying Krishna, but Krishna as the Akila Rasamrita Murti. So Akila means all, Rasa means rasa, transcendental mellow, or a relationship. So Akila Rasa means he is all the rasas which are Amrita, nectarian, and Amrita also means eternal. Murti means personification. He is the personification of all the possible transcendental rasas. That is Akila Rasamrita Murti. That Krishna is the subject matter of this book. And this comes out very beautifully in this verse, very famous verse from the 10th canto, when Krishna and Balram are entering into the wrestling arena of Kamsa. So they are just going to fight with Chanura, Mushtika, Shala, Toshala, Kuta and all these gigantic wrestlers. And in their presence, Krishna and Balram are looking very, very tiny. And everyone who sees Krishna, they experience different emotions. This is very nicely brought out in this verse. Mallanam Ashanir Ninam Naravaro Strinam Smaro Mortiman Gopanam Swajano Asatam Kshitibujam Shasta Swapitro Shishuhu Mrityur Bojapater Virada Vidusham Tatvam Param Yoginam Vrishninam Paradevateti Vidito Rangam Gataha Sa Agraja. So this, as we saw, this is a description of Krishna entering into the wrestling arena of Kamsa along with Balramji. So it is mentioned, each of these indicates a particular rasa. The wrestlers saw Krishna and they saw him as a thunderbolt, Ashani. This indicates Virya rasa, the rasa of chivalry. Nrinam Naravaro, the common men of Mathura, saw him as the best of males. Just like a cricket enthusiast would see how would he feel when he sees Sachin Tendulkar walking in front of him in the on the road? He would be dumbstruck, awestruck, Vismaya rasa. Strinam Smaro Mortiman, the ladies of Mathura saw him as Cupid personified, Madhurya rasa. Gopanam Swajano, the cowherd boys saw him as just one of them, one of his friends. So this is two rasas are involved here, two compatible rasas. One is Sakya ras, another is Hasya ras. Sakya is friendship, Hasya is joking mood, the mood of very joking. And Asatam Kshitibujam Shasta. Asatam Kshitibujam means the nefarious, impious kings saw him as chastiser. This is Raudra ras, anger, one of the secondary rasas. Swapitroho Shishuhu, the elderly Gopas of Vrindavan who had come there to watch this whole thing, they saw him as their own children. And of course, they were feeling very compassionate that Krishna and Balram had to fight with these mountain-like wrestlers. They were wondering what will happen to our children. There was deep compassion and fear. So this is Vatsalya ras, parental affection, and Karuna ras, compassion. Virada Vidusham, the unintelligent people saw Krishna as Virat Purusha. This is called as Bhibatsa rasa. And Mrityur Bojapati. Bojapati is Kamsa. Kamsa saw Krishna as death personified. Bhayanak rasa. He was ghastly. Tattvam Param Yoginam. The yogis saw him as absolute truth. This is Shanta rasa. Vrishninam Paradevata. And all the Vrishnis, they saw him as as their most worshipable deity. So this is Dasya rasa. Okay. So in this way, Krishna is described as Akila Rasamrita Murti. So this is the Vastu Nirdesh Shloka of this book, which defines what is the subject matter. It is Krishna only, but more specifically, Krishna, the personification of all transcendental mellows. So this indicates that the subject matter of this book is specifically rasa. And the 19 chapters which we will study, which is within the scope of Bhakti Shastri, actually does not even start describing rasa. Even though the purpose of the book is to describe Bhakti Rasa, this is not Bhakti Amrita Sindhu, but this is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Bhakti Rasa is the subject matter, but the first 19 chapters or the eastern section lays a very strong foundation for subsequently describing the subject matter of rasa. So this is about Vastu Nirdesh. So as and when, I will again repeat it so that you get little bit used to it. As and when I am discussing If you, if some subject matter is not clear, you would need a more elaborate or more clear elaboration on that particular subject matter. Kindly type your question in the chat box, and I will address these questions in tomorrow's class. Okay. So that way at least we can get some satisfaction of a reasonable dialogue. Of course, there is always, we could have done a Zoom discussion, but with hundreds of people attending, it is very clumsy to facilitate one-on-one question and answer. It would become very difficult. So we decided that we would take these questions from the chat box. So you can please ask relevant questions, that way there can be a good reasonable participation. So that is the first aspect of Mangalacharan, invoking auspiciousness. The second aspect is Namaskar. So Namaskar means offering obeisances. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Grantera Arambakari Mangalacharan Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinera Smaran. At the beginning of the book, I offer, I am trying to invoke auspiciousness by offering obeisances to three personalities: Guru, Vaishnava and Bhagavan. Why? Tinera Smarana Haya Vigna Vinashan Anayase Haya Nija Vanchita Puran. He says, Tinera Smarana Haya Vigna Vinashan. There are two benefits of favorably, affectionately remembering these three personalities. Vigna Vinashan. All of one's obstacles for bhakti will be removed just by remembering these three personalities. Anayase Haya Nija Vanchita Puran. And very easily one attains one's cherished goal by remembering these personalities favorably. So in this way, Srila Rupa Goswami also offers his obeisances to these three personalities. We will briefly see. So first he offers obeisances to Bhagavan. His worshipable Lord is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, Hridiyasya preranaya pravartitoham varaka rupopi tasya harehe padakamalam vande Chaitanya devasya. He says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why? Varaka rupopi, even though I am a very wicked person, it is by his inspiration that I am compiling this book. So he says that Hridi yasya preranaya pravartitoham. I have taken this job of compiling such a great literature, even though I have absolutely no qualification, only because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has inspired me to write this, compile this literature. Then he offers his obeisances to his Guru. So Srila Rupa Goswami accepted his own elder brother Sanatan Goswami as his Guru. So he offers his obeisances unto Sanatan Goswami. Vishrama mandirataya tasya Sanatana tanor madishasya bhakti rasamrita sindur bhavatu sada ayam pramodaya. He says, may this work Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu always act as a recreation hall for my dear Guru, Srila Sanatan Goswami. Whenever he wants to have some fun, recreation, let him come and relax in this ocean of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Like that. And then he also offers his obeisances to the Vaishnavas in a very interesting way. He compares the Vaishnavas to makaras. And Srila Prabhupada translates a makara to be a shark. But actually, if you see what a makara is, it's a very strange animal. It has a lion's head, a fish's body, and some parts of that makara looks like human being. So, and it is not the biggest amongst the aquatics, but it is said to be the king of all aquatics, makara. And Krishna wears makara kundal also. So he is comparing the devotees to makara, bhakta makaran. he says. So, he says, he compares the devotees to Makaras for three reasons. First, he says, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhau Charatah. You will never see a Makara. You will see a Makara only in ocean water. You will never spot a Makara in river water or pond water or a well water. You can never spot a Makara there. Similarly, you will find the devotees always frolicking in the ocean of Bhakti Rasa, and you will never see them interested in or relishing topics of material sense gratification, karma, jnana, yoga, etc. And the second reason why he compares the devotees to Makara, he says, Ashilita Mukti Nadikan. Even though many rivers flow into the ocean. So rivers flowing into the ocean means the aquatics in the ocean have free access to go into the river. While other aquatics may go and check out, how the river water is, you will never find a Makara interesting in exploring the waters of the river. So, the various rivers flowing into the ocean are compared to the various kinds of mukti, liberation. Salokya, Sarshti, Samipya, Sarupya, Sayujya. All these various kinds of mukti are compared to the rivers. Even though a devotee has access to all these kinds of liberation, Krishna is very eager to offer these liberations to the devotee. As Krishna says in one of the verses, Swarga apavarga maddama katanchid yadi vanchati sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakta labate anjasa. Whatever a devotee wants, if he wants Swarga or Sayujya Mukti or my own abode, I am very eager to give it to my devotees. Krishna says, but they don't want it. They don't want to try it. They are just happy, relishing the bliss of serving Krishna in one of the transcendental mellows. This is the second reason why Rupa Goswami compares the devotees to Makara. And the third reason, he says, is Paribhuta Kala Jala Bhiyaha. So he says, a fisherman's net might find many different kinds of fishes. But no fisherman has ever caught a Makara in his fishing net. Why? Because Makaras are deep water swimmers. And a net cannot reach as deep, a fisherman's net cannot reach as deep as a Makara can swim. So similarly, the Bhakta Makaras, the shark-like devotees, will never be caught by the net of time and karma because of swimming deep into the ocean of Bhakti Rasa. So for these three reasons, in a very beautiful way, Srila Rupa Goswami glorifies the devotees. So that brings us to the end of this end of the Vandana or the Vaishnava Vandan, Namaskar section. And the third section is Ashirvad. So Ashirvad means offering benediction to the reader. So what does the reader of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu stand to gain? So Srila Rupa Goswami says, Mimamsaka vadabhagnehe katinam api kuntayan asau jihvam spuratu sanatana suchiram tava Bhakti Rasamritam bodhihi. He says, just like, in brief I will summarize this verse because we are already running short of time. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, anyone who takes shelter of this ocean of Bhakti Rasa will never ever be confused or tempted to explore any other philosophy, which are compared here to volcanic eruptions within an ocean. Actually, some of you might know that just like we have volcanoes on land which may erupt spewing out lava, molten lava, which are very dangerous to human beings and all other animals also. Similarly, it is mentioned that within the ocean there are bigger mountains and bigger volcanic eruptions. But no one ever comes to know because the sheer volume of that water completely smothers that volcanic eruption. Similarly, one who takes shelter of this Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu will have such clarity of understanding the superiority of bhakti that he will never ever try to explore any other philosophy but pure devotional service as described in Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. So now let's come to this next subject matter, which is Grantha Vibhag. Now that auspiciousness has been invoked, so now we have taken blessings of all great personalities. We have established the subject matter of the book, and Rupa Goswami has given a favorable benediction to the practitioners to the readers of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. Now he wants to explain how he has divided this book. So Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, as we saw, he has divided the book into 4 sections: Eastern, Southern, Western and Northern. So, and each side has multiple chapters which he divides it into the form of waves. So, the Eastern section of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu describes the various varieties of bhakti. First, in the first section which we are discussing right now, the first wave, he talks about Samanya Bhakti. Samanya Bhakti means an overview of what bhakti has to offer to its practitioners. What will a practitioner of Bhakti Marga, what will he gain? And in the second wave, he talks about Sadhana Bhakti. And within Sadhana, he talks about Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. This is a huge wave. This is the longest wave in the whole book. Then he talks, in the third wave, he talks about Bhava Bhakti. And in the fourth wave, he talks about Prema Bhakti. Of course, we will see exactly what they mean later. But for now, we will just try to understand this. Then, having laid a solid foundation explaining the nature of bhakti, in the southern section of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami discusses what is called as Samagri Bhavas. So, Samagri Bhavas means the components of spiritual rasa. So, Samagri Bhavas means what are the components of rasa? Rasa means a spiritual experience. When a devotee in relationship with Krishna experiences a spiritual emotion, what are the various ingredients of that bhava? So he divides it into 5. He calls them Vibhav, Anubhav, Satvika Bhav, Sanchari Bhav and Sthayi Bhav. So I will just briefly touch upon this subject matter just so that we can get some understanding. Vibhav means that which inspires emotion, the spiritual emotion. So for spiritual emotion to flow, it is 2-way. So you need an object of love and a reservoir of love. Like say for example, in a relationship between mother and son, the mother has love towards the son. So the son is the object of love and the mother is the reservoir of love. So the object of love is called as Vishaya and the reservoir of love is called as Ashraya. So these two personalities are called Vishaya Alambana and Ashraya Alambana. So you need these two personalities for rasa to flow. You cannot have just the mother and no son. There won't be any loving feelings that will be exchanged. You cannot have just the son but no mother, no loving feelings will be exchanged. But when the mother and son both are there, loving feelings are exchanged between the two. So this is called as alambana. And sometimes in the absence of the Vishaya, the object of love, some of the other paraphernalia related to that object of love also can act as inspiration. Like for example, when the gopis or the Vrajavasis used to see the footprints of Krishna, Krishna is not personally there, but the footprints of Krishna are there. Or when they see a peacock, they may remember Krishna because Krishna wears a peacock feather. When they hear the sound of flute, that can act as an uddipan of remembering Krishna, and the rasa might flow. So in this way, vibhav means that which inspires rasa. So that is called as alambana and uddipana. It is divided into these two. So that is very elaborately discussed by Srila Rupa Goswami in the first wave of southern section. So once the Vishaya and Ashraya come together, then I will give a practical example to explain this point. I am giving a material example because there is lot of similarity between material rasas and spiritual rasa. That is a whole different subject matter. We will discuss this later. But by this example, you will get a glimpse of the similarity. I will try to explain these components of rasa based on a simple mundane example. Like I went to a boarding school from a very young age. So I used to stay there for months together, and after 7-8 months we used to have our summer vacation. So for summer vacation, we used to come for 2 months back home. So these were the days when email was not there, and even though telephones were there, but we as students never had access to telephones to call our parents. The only way of reaching our parents was through letters. So we used to write these inland letters or postcards, and similarly we used to receive those letters from our parents. So in those days, as soon as the holiday dates are finalized, let's say if it starts from March 15th, then I will be reaching my home on March 16th. Sometimes I used to write a letter telling that I am coming home on March 18th. So my parents are not expecting me until 2 days later, but on March 16th, they are expecting me on 18th. On 16th, I go and ring the bell. So my mother opens the door, expecting maybe milkman or some postman or something. And she sees me. So, and suddenly the first response is that immediately tears start flowing. Some kind of involuntary bodily reactions happen. Non-premeditated. That is, completely involuntary. You cannot stop it. Tears will start flowing, and her voice will get choked up. So these are called as sattvika bhavas. That is the second that is mentioned here. So these sattvika bhavas are 8 in number. Sometimes one may feel trembling, or sometimes vaivarnya, pallor. When someone receives a very shocking news, sometimes they become very pale. Their body becomes white if they experience some terror like that. So these are like involuntary bodily response to a very strong emotion. So as I mentioned here, tears would start flowing. She wants to speak to me, but her voice gets choked up in emotion. So these are called as sattvika bhavas. Then after some time, the natural response of a mother who is seeing her son after a long time is she would embrace me. This is also a spontaneous response of a mother towards her son. But there is a small element of premeditation there. So such premeditated spontaneous response is called as anubhavas. So there are many kinds of anubhavas. Singing, Mother Yashoda sings, but she is not singing Krishna's names as a sadhana. For her, it is a natural response to her love that she has for Krishna. So these are called as anubhavas. Sometimes she might dance. So these are all called as anubhavas. These are also response to the Vishaya and Ashraya coming together, but these responses are slightly premeditated. They are not like Sattvika bhavas, which are completely involuntary. Then there is something called as Sanchari bhava. So Sanchari bhavas are transient emotions. They come, they enhance the mood of that relationship, and then they move. These are called as Sanchari bhavas. Like for example, I will take the same example as I was giving the example of my mother receiving me. After some time, she would come back to her senses and she would get angry on me. Why? Because she was planning a big feast for me 2 days later, expecting me 2 days later. Now she has already cooked. So she feels very bad. So she would start chastising me. Why did you do this? You could have told me that you are coming today. You would have made all the arrangements like that. So, but that anger is born out of love. It comes, it stays for a short time, and then it goes away. But even that anger enhances that love. That anger enhances the whole experience. Even though it is anger may be seen as an unfavorable emotion. But here, this anger actually enhances that love, that loving exchange. So these are called as Sanchari bhavas, transient emotions. They come, enhance, and the beauty of Sanchari bhavas is they should come and they should leave. They can't stay. What if that anger remained for the next 2 months of my stay in my home? It would have been very difficult for me to stay. If day in and day out, 24 hours, if she is angry on me. So then it would become a problem. And then the fifth of the Samagri bhavas that he talks about is Sthai bhav. So Sthai bhav means the basic relationship. Like in this case, my mother has maternal love towards me. That is Sthai bhav. So like that there are 5 Sthai bhavas: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya and Madhurya. So neutral, servitorship and friendship, paternal or maternal love, and then conjugal love. So these 5 rasas are there. This is called as Sthai bhav. Sthai bhav means the basic rasa which does not change. Okay. So this is also a part of the introduction part where he talks about, he gives the Mangalacharan and then he explains how this book is divided. Oh, we forgot. We saw only the eastern and southern side. So in the southern side, as we saw, it talks about this Samagri bhavas, and when they all come together, it is this combined effect creates an experience which is very sweet. As I explained in this particular exchange, there was Vibhav, the mother and son. There was Anubhavas. There was Sattvika bhavas in the form of tears and choking of voice. And there were Anubhavas in the form of embrace. And there were Sanchari bhavas in the form of anger towards the son. And then there was the Sthai bhava, the basic relationship of mother and son. All combined together to give such a pleasant experience, which one would never forget. I am remembering this after 30 years of my life. Close to. Close, may not be 30 years, maybe 27 years of my life. If I'm remembering it, it must have had a deep impact. So even in material relationships, they are enhanced and nourished by these 5 aspects: Vibhav, Satvika Bhav, Anubhav, Sanchari Bhav and Sthayi Bhav. So with respect to a person's relationship with Krishna, these bhavas are explained in the southern wave, southern section of this ocean, which is the second. And then western section, he will describe about, it has 5 waves, which talks about the 5 primary rasas. So when these Samagri bhavas combine together, how it blossoms into rasa. So these 5 rasas, Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras and Madhuryaras. This is described in the western section of this ocean. And then in the northern section, he talks about the secondary rasas. So there are 5 primary rasas and 7 secondary rasas. Ghastliness, and then laughter, astonishment, chivalry, viryaras. Like that, there are 7 rasas, fear. These 7, and then some rasas are compatible, as we saw. Sakyaras and Hasyaras are very compatible. Laughter and friendship. When friends come together, they have lot of fun. Compatible rasa. And then Vatsalya and Karuna, compassion and paternal affection are very conducive rasas. And some rasas are not so distorted mellow, rasabhas. So he will discuss about these 9 topics in the northern section. So in this way he has divided the book. As we saw, the subject matter which we will be discussing is only the first wave and half of second wave of the eastern section, only that much. That too we will be discussing in 2 parts, or if more questions are there, maybe in 3 parts, like that. So this is how the book has been divided. The next important theme, we have very little time left. So the next important theme that we will discuss briefly, and then little more elaborately we will do a very elaborate exercise of evaluating our own practice. But the next theme that he describes is Uttama Bhakti. This being again a review course, we will be we will be doing a quick overview. I will not go in depth into understanding these subject matters. So this course, if we do completely, it is almost like an 80-hour course, but we will be covering it in a much shorter time. So this is an overview. So I won't go into all the details. So we will start with the definition of Uttama Bhakti. You all know this verse, very famous verse. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttama. So he says, Uttama Bhakti, I will give a very basic understanding of this verse. Uttama Bhakti has 4 components. First is Anya Abhilashita Shunyam. That practice of bhakti has, the practitioner should not have any other desire other than the desire to please Krishna. This is the first quality of Uttama Bhakti. Then the second is Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. That bhakti cannot be covered by processes like Jnana, Karma, Yoga, which means one should not think that apart from bhakti, apart from the 9 Navada Bhakti or the 64 limbs mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, one should not, if one thinks that I need to practice some Ashtanga Yoga, I need to practice some Jnana Yoga, or I need to perform some Karma to attain perfection, additionally I need to perform, then this is not Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. This is Jnana Karmadi Avritam, covered by all these things. This is the second element. The third element is Anukulyena. One should have a very favorable intent, favorable, pleasing attitude towards Krishna while worshipping. And Anushilanam. You can't just have pleasing attitude, but that pleasing attitude has to manifest in the form of some personal service. personal activities to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. So these are the 4 elements, and we will briefly see about these 4 elements. First, we will see why does Rupa Goswami start by defining Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service? Why not start by defining Bhakti, devotional service? He can do it. Actually, other acharyas have done it. Bhagavatam has done it. The other acharyas like Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbha starts by defining Bhakti first and then defines pure devotional service. But Rupa Goswami does not bother to define Bhakti, he directly defines Uttama Bhakti. Why? Because the subject matter of this book in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is not Bhakti but Bhakti Rasa. Spiritual mellows. And Bhakti Rasa can manifest only by practice of pure devotional service. By practice of mixed devotional service, one can at the most go to the spiritual world, but he cannot experience a favorable relationship with Krishna in one of the 5 rasas. That is not possible. And also, the 6 benefits of bhakti, which is the next theme that we will be discussing. Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Laguta, Krit, Sudurlabha. How bhakti destroys all sufferings, how bhakti bestows all auspiciousness, how bhakti is very rare, how bhakti makes liberation seem very insignificant because of the bliss that it gives to its practitioners. Like that, we will be seeing 6 benefits of practicing bhakti. Those 6 benefits will not completely manifest if the practice of bhakti is pure, if the practice of bhakti is not pure. So therefore, he starts by defining Uttama Bhakti rather than just bhakti, pure devotional service. So now, as we saw, this bhakti has 2 primary characteristics and 2 secondary characteristics. So primary characteristics means if you remove those characteristics, that whole definition will fall apart. It will not be bhakti at all. And Gauna Lakshan, the secondary characteristics means if you remove them, then that bhakti will not be Uttama Bhakti. So there are 4 characteristics as we saw. Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadhyanavritam, Anukulyena Krishnanashilanam. These 4 aspects. Of the 4, 2 are primary, 2 are secondary. So which are primary? If you see, Anukulyena. Anukulyena means favorable attitude, pleasing attitude. If a person does not have pleasing attitude towards worshipping, towards Krishna, it is not said to be bhakti. For example, Kamsa, Shishupal. You can't tell that they were devotees of Krishna, even though they were thinking of Krishna. Smaranam, constant thinking, anusmriti, but it is not considered as bhakti because it was not anukul, it was not pleasing. And anushilanam means that pleasing attitude should manifest in some practical service. So in this way, bhakti, so these 2 are the primary characteristics, because if these 2 characteristics are not there, you can't call that practice as bhakti only. But additionally, if that person also has no other desire other than the desire to please Krishna, which is called as Anyabhilashita Shunyam. And if that practice, and he tries to please Krishna only by practicing Navada Bhakti, and he does not mix it with Jnana, Karma, etc., then that is called as Uttama Bhakti. But one can practice Bhakti without these 2 components also. One's practice of Bhakti, if it lacks Anyabhilashita Shunyam, which means one does not practice Bhakti for pleasing Krishna, but for, say, liberation or for going to Swarga, he may practice Bhakti also. And Jnana Karma Dhyanavritam, he may contaminate his own practice with some karma element, with some jnana element, with some yoga element. then it becomes Mishra Bhakti or mixed devotional service. So the 1 and 2 are Gauna Lakshana, secondary. One can practice bhakti without these two. But 3 and 4 are primary, because without them, that practice is not called bhakti only. Like that. So now, let's try to understand very briefly the first two kinds of, the first two primary characteristics, which is Krishnanushilanam and Anukulyenam. So Anushilanam means some engagement. Engagement of mind, body, words is called as Anushilanam. And Anu means continuous. Continuous engagement of mind, body and words, okay, is called as Anushilanam. And this Anushilanam has two components. One is called as Cheshta Rupa Anushilanam, another is called as Bhava Rupa Anushilanam. Cheshta means only actions. Action of body, action of mind and action of words, but without any spiritual emotion. This is called as Cheshta Rupa Anushilanam. Like for example, like most of us are practitioners of bhakti. We have not reached the perfect stage of bhakti. We have not reached the stage of bhava or prema. So we don't have spiritual emotions towards Krishna. But nevertheless, we are performing activities for pleasing Krishna, but without spiritual emotions. Because if we had spiritual emotions, then while chanting the holy name, tears would flow from our eyes. While serving the deities, hairs would stand on end and our voice would get choked up. But most of us might not observe these symptoms yet. But they are coming. They'll come in the later stages of our devotional development. But right now we may not have. Therefore, our current practice of bhakti is called as Cheshta Rupa Anushilanam. Only Cheshta is there, Bhava is not there. But when we reach the stage of Bhava, the spiritual emotions will manifest. When we chant, tears might flow, hairs may stand on end. This might happen one day. If we practice properly, this is bound to happen. And at such a stage, the practice of bhakti is called as Bhava Rupa Anushilanam. So Rupa Goswami explains these two. And Krishna Anushilanam. So Krishna Anushilanam means worshipping Krishna, people related to Krishna, like the residents of Vrindavan and the other devotees. Objects related to Krishna are also worshipable. The dress of Krishna is worshipable. The peacock feather of Krishna is worshipable. Flute of Krishna is worshipable. Chamara is worshipable. Anything related to serving Krishna is worshipable. So the word Krishna in Krishna Anushilanam indicates Krishna, his associates and objects related to Krishna also. And even Guru. In fact, if you see the 64 limbs, the first 4-5 limbs are connected to the Guru. Adav Guru Padashraya, taking shelter of the Guru's lotus feet. Vishrambena Guror Seva, serving the Guru with lot of eagerness. Sadhu Marganugamanam, following in the footsteps of as shown by the Guru, and so on. It is all connected to the Guru, but still it is Krishna Anushilanam, because Krishna in Krishna Anushilanam includes people related to Krishna also. So then one may say, why don't you call it Narsingha Anushilanam, Rama Anushilanam? Isn't Prahlad Maharaj performing Uttama Bhakti? Isn't Hanumanji performing Uttama Bhakti? Why only Krishna Anushilanam? Are we Krishna fanatics? Why only, you mean to say Prahlad Maharaj is performing mixed devotional service? Or Hanumanji is performing mixed devotional service? Why only Krishna Anushilanam? Because Ete chamsa kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Huh? Krishna is the fountainhead of all the other incarnations. So Krishna includes Krishna and his expansions. But Narsinga does not include Krishna. Rama does not include Krishna. But Krishna includes Rama, Narsinga, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha ityadi. Therefore Krishna Anushilanam is all inclusive. Whereas Rama Anushilanam, Narsinga Anushilanam is Uttama Bhakti, but it is not all inclusive. This is about the first characteristic, Anushilanam, which includes using one's mind, body and words in serving Krishna with spiritual emotions if one is so elevated, but even if one may not be elevated, nevertheless using them for pleasing Krishna without those emotions. The second aspect we saw is Anukulyena. Anukulyena means favorable. Anukulya means favorable. Anukulyena means with favorableness. So, there are two possible definitions of Anukulyena. The first definition is that which is pleasing to Krishna. And the second is that which is done for pleasing Krishna. If you see this, that which is pleasing to Krishna, even when Keshi or Chanura or Mushtika or Kamsa, when they come to fight with Krishna, Krishna is having lot of fun. It is pleasing to Krishna. He is experiencing Viryaras. But is Keshi, Kamsa, Chanura, Mushtika performing bhakti? No. It is just incidental pleasing. It is not done for pleasing Krishna. Therefore, you cannot say that that which is pleasing to Krishna is actually bhakti. It need not be also. But that which is done for pleasing Krishna is definitely bhakti, even though it may not please Krishna. Like for example, Mother Yashoda is trying to tie Krishna, chastise Krishna for the benefit of Krishna. She wants the benefit of Krishna. She is doing it for the pleasure of Krishna in the long run. But Krishna is displeased. Mother Yashoda goes to take care of the milk which is boiling in the stove so that she could make some nice milk sweets for Krishna. But Krishna is displeased. Why did you leave me alone? And why did you go to attend to that milk? But because that milk was meant for Krishna, she went. But nevertheless, Krishna was displeased. Therefore, if you define Anukulyena to mean that which is pleasing to Krishna, then Mother Yashoda is not a devotee. Because what she did not please Krishna, apparently. And Keshi, Chanura, Mushtika, they all would be defined as devotees because their activities of fighting with Krishna pleased Krishna. So therefore, Anukulyena means that which is done by the practitioner for the pleasure of Krishna, that is Anukulyena. Okay. Then, now we will very briefly see these two Tatastha Lakshanas, Anya Abhilashita Shunyam and Jnana Karmadhyanavritam. So, Anya Abhilashita Shunyam means having any other desire other than the desire to please Krishna. No desire for wealth, no nadanam, najanam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kame, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has mentioned in Sikshashtakam. So, in other words, if one performs bhakti to get bhakti, that is all right. But with any other desire, if one performs bhakti, it is not considered as pure devotional service. Okay. So, and Rupa Goswami further explains, Jiva Goswami explains why this word ita, anya bilashita. It indicates that a devotee generally has a desire only to please Krishna, but under life-threatening situations, if he prays to Krishna for self-protection, that does not disqualify him from being a pure devotee. Like we see in the case of Draupadi. So Draupadi, during this whole Asatsabha, Vastraharan, Leela, she was praying to Krishna for protection. Even though she was not praying for pleasing Krishna, but she was praying to Krishna for protection. But this does not disqualify her from being a pure devotee, because bhakti is defined by Srila Rupa Goswami as Anya Abhilashita Shunyam and not Anya Abhilasha Shunyam. Because if Rupa Goswami would have defined bhakti as Anya Abhilasha Shunyam, then none of us have any hope of practicing pure devotional service, because under some extreme situations we might pray for self-protection. Even that scope would not be left for us. Like that. And then finally, the fourth theme, the fourth aspect of pure devotional service is Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So what Jnana are we talking about? Jnana here generally refers to knowledge of the impersonal Brahman, which is important. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. But if we too much read about the non-difference, the qualitative oneness between Brahman and the Jivatma, then it kills the service attitude. Even though Achintya Bheda Abheda, Bheda and Abheda both are simultaneously present, but for the Vaishnavas, the difference is more important, because the difference between the Jivatma and the Paramatma inspires devotion in his heart. Therefore, too much reading of the Jnana Shastras or the Jnana aspect of bhakti, the Jnana aspect of the scriptures, or karma here refers to the Varnashram duties. If one thinks, I have to perform my Varnashram duties in order to become perfect in bhakti, if one thinks like this, then that is covering the bhakti. And Adi refers to yoga, etc. Yoga or Vairagya, Sankhya, etc. So, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. And it is not Jnana Karmadi Shunyam. Because if you say Jnana Karmadi Shunyam, then Jnana Shunyam would mean no knowledge. It should not be covered by any knowledge, including Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. But studying Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam nourishes one's bhakti. It does not cover one's bhakti. So therefore it is Anavritam. That knowledge should not cover. And Karma Shunyam, if you say Karma Shunyam, then you cannot do Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam. All these 9 limbs cannot be practiced. So therefore it is not Karma Shunyam. It is Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So in this way he defines pure devotional service. So I will take just one more minute, even though we have come to the end of our discussion. I will take just one more minute. Does this definition of pure devotional service match with the Shastric definition? So Srila Rupa Goswami gives a proof. He quotes from this famous verse from Narada Pancharatra. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktiruchyate. So if you see, he says bhakti ruchyate. Bhakti is defined as Rishikesha Sevanam, serving Lord Rishikesha, Rishikena, using one's senses, and Tat Paratvena. This service should be done with the intention of pleasing the Lord, Anukulyena. And Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam. It should be free of any other upadis, any other desires. Anyabhilashita Shunyam. And Nirmalam. Nirmalam means it should not be obstructed by any other processes, which is Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. So in this way, if you see, these 4 elements of pure devotional service are covered in this definition of pure devotional service. Some other time, if we get a chance, we will see so many verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna defines a pure devotee. These 4 elements occur actually. Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadya Anavritam, Anukulyena Krishnana Shilanam, Bhakti Ruttama, like that. Anyway, so we will pause here. Thank you very much for your patient listening. It has It was a very pleasant experience sharing these things with you. Please, if some concepts were not clear, again I will repeat, there is a scope for asking doubts. You can go to the chat box, type your questions. As far as possible, I will try to answer these questions tomorrow just before starting tomorrow's session. So please do ask relevant questions, and your enthusiastic participation is the price that you are expected to pay for this course. So please do participate, take notes, attend all the sessions and ask relevant questions, so that by the end of the course, you have something very tangible to take home. The gift that Rupa Goswami wants to give all of us. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.